Don't miss any content. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell.
Kwadwo Asamoah's struggles at Inter Milan have been well documented here on this channel. Looking at the performances of Ghanaian players abroad, he has been one who has suffered for playing time. Kwadwo Asamoah has not had it easy at Inter Milan, and it's now obvious that he would have to look elsewhere for a club. That is currently official. Kwadwo Asamoah has to look elsewhere, and Inter Milan are ready to let him go along with some other players, according to reports. We'll be looking at those other players and Kwadwo Asamoah's options going forward so he gets enough playing time. I'll also be telling you about the African Women's Cup of Nations. We all know the impact COVID-19 has had on the world, or has had on everything we do in general. We've had to change how we work, we've had to change how we interact with people, we've had to change so many things in our lives to suit the impact this virus has had on humanity. And now, our football that we love so much has been impacted. The African Women's Cup of Nations, which was scheduled for this year, November 2020, has been cancelled entirely, whilst the Afcon and the CHAN and other tournaments have been postponed to a later date. The African Women's Cup of Nations has been cancelled. Why? I'll be telling you that today. As usual, if you're new to the channel, I advise you to subscribe to the channel and to click on the notification bell to get more updates. So I'll start off from the African Women's Cup of Nations. We all know the impact COVID-19 has had on us and our lives and everything we do. The African Women's Cup of Nations was slated to take place later this year in November. The last edition was hosted in 2018, and I was there because it was hosted here in Ghana at the Accra Sports Stadium and the Cape Coast Sports Stadium, the two venues that were used for that tournament. Nigeria emerged triumphant once again, being the champions in the women's tournament, perennial champions of the sort, and it was an amazing spectacle to see the women grace the beautiful game of football. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and after a meeting with CAF authorities, they deemed it right to cancel the tournament altogether. Whilst the Afcon 2021 and other tournaments were getting rescheduled dates, this tournament did not get a rescheduled date, and it was quite unfortunate. We would not see a woman in action anytime soon. Now, the chairperson of the CAF Organizing Committee for Women's Football, Isha Johansson, sought to explain why this was the case. Why couldn't she, as a woman, fight for the African Women's Cup of Nations to get a postponed date? She tries to explain that. Now, speaking to outlet Soccer 25 East, Isha said, "For the 2020 African Women's Cup of Nations, there were circumstances beyond our control, which made it difficult for CAF to organize it, and all options were explored, but to no avail. We did not have any option other than to cancel for three main reasons. Firstly, the withdrawal of Congo meant that we find a new host. For that, the bid was reopened. Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea expressed interest. However, both lacked the most important support document, which were the letter of support from their respective governments," she added. "If we cannot get a letter of support from your government to host a tournament, it becomes quite complex and problematic in the long run, because we cannot organize the competition without the support or guarantee from the host country coming from the government." The chairperson of the CAF Organizing Committee for Women's Football also explained that the coronavirus pandemic did not help, as football on the continent has been suspended since March. The outbreak of the COVID, which has led to the suspension of football activities around the world and the continent, indeed the rest of the world, due to the fact that the qualifiers initially scheduled for April 2020 had been postponed indefinitely. So there you have it, your reasons why the tournament was cancelled altogether, and I think they are valid reasons. The qualifiers could not be played in time, and it was scheduled for April 2020. Also, the host nation Congo pulled out, and Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea, who were open to hosting it could not get supporting documents from their government, and that would be problematic, and I get that entirely. I think it's quite unfortunate that these things could not be sorted out, and now it looks like we didn't have a host at the time. Probably if we had host, there would have been something to work with, but with no host and no country coming forward, none of the other who wanted to host having the support from their government, at least with a supporting document, it was out of their hands. And that's what the CAF Women's Organizing Secretary was saying, and I don't think we can argue with her on that front. I think those are really valid reasons for cancellation of the tournament entirely. No qualifiers, no host country. Where will we play the tournament should it have gone on? Which teams would have gone into the tournament should they have gone on? You can make the case of the Afcon as well, the men's own. The qualifiers have not been played. We played only 2 rounds of qualifying, and with that we still have our host nation intact, that is Cameroon, and they are on track to hosting it. We have a host nation to work with. The qualifiers will be mitigated later this year, and it will be postponed to 2022 because 2021 is a packed year and the qualifiers might even enter until then. So I think those reasons are valid enough for me. I tend to agree with them being valid enough reasons to cancel the tournament. Let me know what you think about those reasons. Are they valid enough for the tournament, or were they valid enough for the tournament to be cancelled entirely? The African Women's Cup of Nations, I mean. To my final story, it has to do with a fellow Ghanaian. Kwadwo Asamoah. Kwadwo Asamoah's struggles at Inter Milan have been well documented. He started out his career with Udinese before moving out to Juventus under Antonio Conte, where he changed his position from midfield to number 10 into the left back role. He excelled in that position under Conte, and as Massimiliano Allegri came into Juventus, he lost favor with the coach. He decided to move elsewhere and join Inter Milan. Inter Milan welcomed their new coach in Antonio Conte, who favored Kwadwo Asamoah a lot. And Kwadwo Asamoah, I'm sure at that time, felt that he had turned the corner and probably he would be used more frequently by the incoming coach. How wrong he must have been. Kwadwo Asamoah has suffered a lot of injuries this season, and that has hampered his progress in the Inter Milan side. He hasn't become as reliable as he used to be for coach Antonio Conte, and because of that, in the January transfer window, Antonio Conte brought in Manchester United player Ashley Young, who himself has been transformed from a midfielder into a defender as fullback, and that is what Kwadwo Asamoah is fighting with for now. He has to fight for his position, but it looks like it will be a losing battle for him. He's among a list of players that reportedly Inter Milan are looking to offshore, and I'll be letting you know who the other players are. Now, Kwadwo Asamoah, who has had a torrid time at Inter Milan this season, is set to be dispensed by the club, along with 4 other players at the end of the season. Now, the midfield gem is one of the players set to be shown the exit door after a disappointing spell with the club in the last few seasons. Now, Diego Godin, Matias Vecino, and Sebastiano Esposito are the players, along with Kwadwo Asamoah, who are set to leave the club at the end of season. Now, since his arrival at the club from Juventus some 2 seasons ago, he has managed only 40 appearances and a goal, the remaining blighted by injuries. Now, Asamoah has practically spent a large chunk of his playing career in Italy, first with Udinese 2008 to 2012, playing 114 times and scoring 8. He moved to Juventus, he played 116 times and scored 4 goals during a 6-year period before joining Inter Milan. Though Asamoah is injury ravaged most times, he is hardworking, versatile, tactically intelligent player, and has an eye for a pass. By injuries, the Ghanaian is a delight to watch when he is in full operation, connecting the dots in midfield, as well as playing hardly at the wings of the field. In the last few months, he has since had suitors in the Turkish giant Fenerbahce and other MLS clubs. So Kwadwo Asamoah struggling to get playing time at Internazionale. Where do you think he should move to next? Where do you think Kwadwo Asamoah will get as much playing time as he wants? Let me know your thoughts in the comments box. So that has been it for today. Speaking to you about why the African Women's Cup of Nations was cancelled. No hosts and the qualifiers could not be played. Also, Kwadwo Asamoah is set to be released by Internazionale at the end of the season. Where should he go next? Fenerbahce, MLS, where should your man, our man, go next? I'll see you guys in the next one. Enjoy your day.